Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. Welcome to our new Fantasy Sumo tier list for Aki 2023. Before we start the tier list itself, a couple days ago I realized I should probably go over last Basho's rankings and see how we did. Since I just thought of it, I'll make it the start to this video, but in the future look for this to be a separate video done just after the Basho. Alright, let's mark how we did. Green checkmark means they justified the pick, and a different letter means that rank would have made more sense given how they performed. Bear in mind that the letter grade is my assessment of how they would do if relatively healthy and fighting around their expected level of performance. The top was pretty off, mostly due to injuries. An S tier injury risk category is being added this time precisely for guys like Terunofuji and Takayasu because that's where they would have fit last time. Teru is simply S tier as long as he can fight. Takayasu was trashing everyone until he re-injured himself on day 6 and fell to pieces, and it was no secret they were both vulnerable to injury going in. I think Asanoyama was correctly placed though, because he wasn't hurt going in, and he finished 2 wins behind Nishikigi despite 4 automatic losses due to the torn biceps suffered against Hoshoryu. Without that injury, it's hard to see him not hitting at least 10 wins, which would have justified the S ranking. Ganayama and Hakuoho basically should have been flip-flopped. A tier assumes 10 wins, so I have to call Daisho and Waka wrong since they only got to 9. I gave Kirishima and Takakeisho an adjustment to injury tier because they were hurt before the Basho, but the news for both in terms of participation broke well after the video was made. I really should have treated Takakeisho as an injury risk anyway, but there was no real way to know Kiri should go there. Abi, I expected more and he just did not do well. I don't know if he was hurt or how hurt, but obviously B tier was wrong for a guy who had a losing record. For the B injury tier guys, obviously Endo fits. It's hard to say how to judge Kinbozan and Kota Shoho though, because they didn't do great, but they also didn't seem to be at full strength. But Mitakeumi definitely should have been C tier. Yeah, he's got injuries, but his baseline performance doesn't seem capable of even an outside shot at 10 wins in the Joy anymore. I know he was dealing with other issues, but he only had 3 wins. B was too high. Deciding who was correct at C tier and who wasn't was a little tricky. Winning records were obviously okay. For the rest, since C tier just indicates a reasonable chance at Akachi Koshi, there's some judgment necessary based on how they performed. 7 and 8 records, like Ura, are close enough to a winning record that they've pretty clearly justified a C tier ranking. Someone like Onisho fits, in my opinion, because he was 6 and 5 with a couple good wins over Waka and Ganoyama before everything fell to pieces. Likewise, Chiyoshoma and Myogiryu were both 6 and 6 before getting a tough run the last 3 days. Myogiryu finishing with Tamawashi, Endo, and Shona Naomi was borderline unfair. But I have Shodai deserving D tier with the same record because one of his 6 wins was a Fusen over Teru, and the day 3 victory over Waka looks like a complete outlier compared to the rest of the tournament. It was a disaster. The rest of C tier is much more straightforward. Hirota Umi, Hokuseiho, and Sadano Umi only had 5 wins, so they were less competitive than even the bottom end of my expectations. Hokuto Fuji, Shona Umi, and Ryuden, of course, get bumped to B tier, since that's the rank for guys who can get to 10 wins, and they got to 10 wins. Obviously, Hokuto Fuji was more or less the best pick of the tournament, but that's such an outlier in performance for him that I still think B is the appropriate correction, not any higher. And in D tier, obviously I got Nishikigi way wrong. Meisei might have landed his 8 and 7 record by winning his last 4 against guys who finished with losing records, but he did get Akachi Koshi, so he's corrected to C. The rest all did pretty badly though, so those were correct. Alright, on to the Aki tier list. Alright, here's the new tier list. As you can see, we have more ranks, more injury risk ranks. We don't have one for D tier because the tier maker only allows for 10 total ranks, but that's okay. If we're expecting you to have a losing record and putting you in D tier anyway, it doesn't really matter if it's because you're not that good or because you're hurt. So there you go. Alright, let's start at the top. Terunofuji, obviously, S tier injury risk. Permanent injury risk, but he's actually a good example of what I mean when I say that the letter grade is based on the baseline expectation of what we can expect from them if they're not clearly injured and hampered by that injury. He's never going to be 100%. He's always going to be kind of barely able to get in the ring when he can fight at all. But if he's able to do that, he's still going to womp dudes. So his current baseline is still definitely S tier. He's just a huge risk if you're going to pick him in anything that he's going to make it through the whole tournament. Kirishima, A, injury risk. We've seen recently, obviously, that he is 10 wins, no doubt, almost every time. In fact, we should probably expect it just about every time, even if he slips once in a while. But that's when he's healthy. We know that he is still working through his back injury. We don't know what it's at right now, but it's not 100% yet. So without further news along those lines, we have to treat him as an injury risk. He's probably not the biggest risk, definitely not as big a risk as a lot of guys we're going to see on here, but to a certain extent, it is take your chances here. Taki Keisho, B, injury risk. He's going to fight. He's Kadoban. The strategy of taking 2 tournaments off and just dropping the Ozeki rank in order to get the rest to go 10 wins at Sekiwake in the next tournament is very risky, and I would be very surprised if he actually did that, even though some people think it's a good idea. Now, you'd think that, well, isn't a healthy Taki Keisho A tier? I mean, wouldn't you expect 10 wins out of him? I think 10 wins is going to happen a lot. I mean, we've seen that in the recent past, but he's breaking down so hard and so often that I'm just not convinced with the rise of the new Ozeki, with Kiri, with Hoshoryu, with maybe even Kotonowaka starting to get up there, that he is as much of a shoo-in for 10 wins as he used to be, even when he feels good. So I think he's obviously a safe Kachikoshi when he's good to go, but B tier and obviously an injury risk this time. Hoshoryu, A tier. He's been dealing with having his leg taped. I don't think that's serious enough to treat him as an actual injury risk. However, it could downgrade his performance slightly. And in any case, when you look at Terunofuji, Kirishima, Taki Keisho, these other guys up at the Yokozuna and Ozeki ranks with him, if they're even mostly good to go, they can absolutely compete with him for the best fantasy pick in those slots at those ranks. So he's not an absolute shoo-in gimme, you gotta pick him no matter the game, but he's obviously very good, and 10 wins should be a minimum expectation from him. Daisho and Wakamoto Haru, both B tier. These guys were, I mean, it's a little hard to believe that they only got 9 wins last time. They had a couple of not great losses. We're just going to say that and let it go. They kind of looked like the people who doubted their Ozeki credentials, even though they were on Ozeki runs, they made those people look right. They made those people look smart. They're good. They're very good. They should continue to get winning records again and again and again, but they are not at that level that they're going to keep putting up the double digits and push for Ozeki time and time and time again. They showed some of their limitations. Daisho's limitation is that his strategy is very straightforward and he hasn't really built that many different options into his game. Wakamoto Haru might have more of an upside because he's got the physical ability and he's just got to find more comfort with different moves, but he can do those things. But right now, yeah, absolutely expect a winning record out of him, but they showed last time that the 10 wins that they were nailing for multiple Bashos is not a gimme for them. It's not a given. Don't expect it every time. Kotonowaka, also B tier. He looked great last time. He looked great in July. However, there's one main thing that keeps happening with him that didn't happen last time, and that is he has this amazing habit of finding ways to get these great wins against guys that he struggled with in the past. He did it against Hoshoryu last tournament, but also losing to guys that maybe he shouldn't. But he didn't really have any of those losses last time. Has he turned a corner in terms of his consistency? If he has, we might start seeing him in A tier. But his performance up to this point is such that I am not yet convinced that he is, yeah, he is a Sekiwake and he's definitely going to get 10 wins. I think there's a good chance, and if I had to pick between the 3 Sekiwake, Kotonowaka might be the best pick. But I don't think he's above Daisho and Wakamoto Haru at this point, so they're all B tier. Komusubi, Nishikigi, D tier. No, I'm not doing that. C tier, though. Is Nishikigi the guy that we saw at the start of May and the end of July, or the end of May and the start of July? That's the big question. Do you really think, though, that he is going to go absolutely raffle stomping through the Sanyaku again? Because I don't. Nobody does that. Like, really, nobody does what he did last time. But then he turned around and started getting beat by guys who were not on the level of Hoshoryu and Aisho and Wakamoto Haru. Not saying anything against Shonen Naomi and Ryuden, at least not as a wrestler, but like he started to show his limitations later in the tournament. He is better than I thought he was last time, but he is not good enough to really be considered anything more than C tier. I'm not going to take away what he did last time. I'm not going to say, no, he's doomed, he's going to have a losing record, but I would not be shocked if he did. I think he's maybe 40-60 to get a winning record this time at best. Tobizaru, ultimate C tier. This dude is, I think I said it last time, he's just going to sit in the high Maegashira, low Sanyaku for years to come until he gets hurt or he just gets sick of this shit. C tier. He's just going to keep getting 8 and 7, 7 and 8, 6 and 9, 9 and 6, and basho after basho after basho. That's what he does. Hokuto Fuji. Oh, man. Oh, Captain Faceplant. Like, he showed what he can do. And the fact that he did it against a lot of low-ranking guys and started to show how difficult it is to do it against higher-ranking guys makes me sort of tempted to say, you know, he's likely to end up with a losing record. But you know what? He did beat Hoshoryu. He has been at this level before. Being at Maegashira 1 East is tough. You get all of those difficult matchups right away. So I am definitely not seeing him as 50-50, but man, he showed enough that if he shows the kind of control this time that he did last time, because usually he gets himself in trouble by being over aggressive and just trying to storm the gates of the castle against everybody and getting caught and thrown, pushed down, whatever. He did a much better job avoiding those kind of situations. If he can do that again, he can do all right. He's not going to get 10 wins though. C tier is good for him. Meisei, I am tempted to put him at D tier again because he was definitely looking D tier until the last 4 matches of last basho. But okay, if he finished 8 and 7 and nothing's really changed, we might as well just put him at C tier again. That's the only thing that makes sense. Abi, C tier. At Maegashira 2 East, he's going to fight a lot of the Sanyaku guys early. He did not do great, but he has shown in the past that he is capable of more than what he did in July. All that really says is he likely to get 10 wins? Does it even seem like an outside possibility that he can get 10 wins? Not really. But does he seem doomed to a losing record? No, not really. So C tier, pretty clear. Asanoyama, A tier, big injury risk. He says his arm is okay. Yeah, okay, fine. He did come back and fight with a torn biceps, which wow, that was kind of impressive. And he managed to get his winning record. So now he's Maegashira 2. The competition is basically the same as last time, and he was definitely on the road to getting 10 wins. So 10 wins expected when he's healthy? Yeah, I think that's fair to say where he is now. However, he messed up his toe, and apparently his initial comments is like, it's fine, it's not that bad. He then went back and is like, no, actually, it's pretty messed up. He's going to fight. He's definitely going to fight. And the toe may hamper him quite a bit. It may not hamper him much at all. We're not going to know until the basho starts. But this is an A-level guy who may not show obvious signs of injury, but still only end up with a C-level performance. Like 8 and 7 with a lot of losses where it's, how did he lose to that guy? Well, he's kind of messed up. It's just not super apparent. Shodai, D tier. Do I even need to explain this? At Maegashira 3 and up, those are the guys who get the Sanyaku early. The Joy stretches down to like Maegashira 4, but they get the Sanyaku guys later, and that's why they end up not often fighting the whole Sanyaku. But at 3 East, he's probably getting everybody, and we've already seen he cannot stand up to this. Last basho was pretty sad. I don't expect anything better here. D tier. Tamawashi. I am tempted to call him D tier because going 15 and 15 over 2 bashos at Maegashira 7 and then just by chance jumping to 3 is not a sign for success. In fact, I am going to put him D tier, but I'm going to say it's about 25-75 in my head that he has a winning record. There are enough guys around him who are vulnerable. Like, I think he'll probably crack Shodai. I think he'll have a good chance of beating Nishikigi, stuff like that. But who else does he fight? If he has to fight like Ganoyama, Shona Naomi, those guys are physically, they're just beasts. They're the kind of guys who could really take it to him. Schedule's going to play a large role in how he ends up doing. If he struggles early, he could end up pulling a winning record just by having easier opponents for longer later on. But I think he's got not the best chance in the world at catching that winning record. Just like with Shodai, at Maegashira 3, he's going to have a lot of Sanyaku opponents early, and he may end up in a hole he can't dig out of. Takanosho, C tier. If he was in Tamawashi's space, I would say he would be D tier. But at 4 East rather than 3 West, if Terunofuji is out, but all the other Sanyaku stay in, he's in a position where he may not get that many Sanyaku opponents. If he does well early, he'll get more, but that means he got off to a good start, so he's got, a good record. He doesn't need that many wins in the back half to catch an 8-7 record. If he starts poorly, then he'll probably fight fewer Sanyaku guys and have an easier time catching up. So where he is and the way he fights, as long as his knee sort of holds up, he's got 8-7 or 7-8 written all over him. Ura, C tier. Just like last time, he hasn't moved. The same logic as Takanosho applies. If he does well, he's got, a good record to start with. He doesn't need that many wins to get to 8-7. If he starts poorly, he'll have an easier schedule later he can take advantage of. He'll probably just get a record that keeps him around where he is now, be it going up slightly or down slightly. Ganoyama, C tier. He took advantage of being at the bottom of the division and got 10 wins. Now, I think he's a little more capable than he showed. After he lost to Hakuoho, it looked like he had this idea in his head where he's like, oh my God, I can lose. I forgot I could lose. What do I do? But he pulled it together and he, got back to his winning ways. The problem is the level of competition where he is now is going to ratchet way, way up. Can he get a winning record? Absolutely. Should we expect 10 wins out of him? Absolutely not. If he gets it, that's going to be an overperformance, so he is 100% C tier. Shona Naomi. A nice surprise for the people who hadn't really been paying attention to him that much, like myself, but now he's shown that he's basically of the same description that I just had for Ganoyama. He took advantage of being at the bottom of the division. The level of competition is going to be a lot higher now, and expecting 10 wins out of him and expecting a losing record out of him are both a little too extreme. So, decent chance at a winning record, but not much more than that. Onosho, C tier injury risk. So his knees have been kind of messed up the last couple tournaments. He is definitely capable of getting a winning record where he is now, and he's a step further away from the Sanyaku, which should help. But if he's still not quite right, this could be a struggle. So 10 wins is asking too much. A winning record is very reasonable. But if you don't quite trust guys who are really good at fighting through injuries, who are really good at trying to hide injuries even when they're clearly impacted by them, you might want to stay a little further away from him than him at this rank might normally warrant. Ryuden, yet another C tier. He's obviously healthy now. He showed that last Basho. He didn't seem to have any ill effects of the problems that plagued him the last couple tournaments. But you look at this group of guys at ranks 4, 5, 6, 7, and it looks like they're just going to kick the hell out of each other. This looks like a whole bundle of wrestlers destined to all finish with a single digit in both the win and loss columns. Somebody's going to break that pattern, but the vast majority are going to fit that bill, which means there's going to be a lot of C-tier guys here. Takayasu, S-tier injury risk. Once again, Takayasu started last tournament 5-0. At Maegashira 7, he is a killer. Even with the upgraded competition around those ranks, he should smash those guys if he's healthy. And I'm sure he feels fine going into day one. But is that going to last? Normally, when he starts having injury problems, we kind of know about it going in. That's been his MO in the past, and he just kind of fights through it to the best of his ability. But last time he was okay, and then bang, the injury hit. If that's a thing that can strike him now, until we see a couple Bashos in a row of him managing to maintain his health all the way through, he's going to be injury risk level. But at Maegashira 7, yeah, if he can go 100% the whole way through, he should crush. Oho, D tier. I'm not saying that Oho is so bad that he can never score a winning record at Maegashira 6, 7, 8 like that. But look at the guys who are around him right now. Even though he's away from the Joy, and he didn't have any Joy fights last time, that's important. He didn't have any, or not Joy fights, Sanyaku fights. He didn't have any Sanyaku fights last time. He still only finished 6 and 9. And now look who's near him and probably going to fight him. Ganayama, Shonen Umi, Onisho, Ryuden, Takayasu, Hiraumi, Hakuoho. It's too much talent for a guy who just doesn't seem able to figure out how to put his body to maximum use. He's got the talent, but he's just not figuring it out. Losing record. Kotoeko is damn near permanent C tier. Unless he ends up in or near the Joy, he's basically a guy who's going to find ways to win, but doesn't have the physical gifts to go over to 10 wins basically ever. So C tier all the way. Hiraumi, yet another C tier. I want to put him at B tier. Like, I am so tempted to put him at B tier because he's far enough away from the Joy that he should not get any Sanyaku opponents. He shouldn't get any of the highest level opponents, which he's good enough to be a shoo-in for a winning record against the right competition. But I don't think this is the right kind of competition, because within a few ranks of him, just like Oho, we've got Ganayama, Shonen Umi, Onisho, Ryuden, Takayasu, Hakuoho, Midori Fuji. Hokuseiho should still be vulnerable, but there's just too many guys who are capable of being just above his particular ceiling of who he can physically handle. Hiraumi goes all out 100% of the time. He's very fun to watch, but there are guys who just have too much physicality for him, and I think he's surrounded by too many of them. He's still got a decent chance at a winning record. I just don't think it's a given. Midori Fuji, B tier. Midori Fuji's 10-5 tournament, where he won the 10 in a row and then the competition got upgraded and he lost the next 5, is pretty much Midori Fuji. He's not going to surprise anybody anymore, so I don't think hoping for 10 wins is a good idea. That's really over the top. But at Maegashira 9, when you look at the guys around him, outside of Hakuoho, who might just bulldoze him, he's definitely got the speed and the skills to take down any of them. So a winning record, expecting a winning record, is very reasonable. 10 wins, definitely not outside the realm of possibility. Midori Fuji should have a pretty decent tournament this time. Hakuoho, A, injury risk. His shoulder is a mess. Even if he fights, it's kind of unlikely that he's actually going to fight at an A tier level. He could get 10 wins if the shoulder injury doesn't impact him to the point where it actually makes him unable to do some stuff. If it just hurts a lot, but he can still do what he needs to, I think 10 wins is absolutely possible. But we don't know where he is in that respect. There's also, and it seems like more of an outside chance now than when I initially heard about this, but there is a chance that he doesn't fight at all. He's definitely good enough, because he's only Maegashira 9. Bear in mind, he's not really at any risk of fighting any Sanyaku guys unless he fights for the title again, unless he's contending again. So he's definitely got the ability to be considered A tier. It's just, how much do you want to risk on that shoulder? Personally, I wouldn't risk much. Kinbozan, C tier. I don't know how to feel about this guy. We know that at Maegashira 10 he can succeed, but I don't know if he's injured to the point where I should put him in the injury risk file. But is he maybe not as good as we thought he was? This is more of a safety pick. If he gets 10 wins and ends up in B tier, cool. But I'm not sure that I expect a winning record out of him. I think it's probably 75-25. Maybe you consider him high C tier, but I don't think it's a given. And unless I think it's a given, I can't bump him up to B. So he stays in C. Endo, though, Endo's B tier. Endo should have a winning record. Endo does well at these ranks. Endo sprained his knees, and he's also just not fit for joy level competition anymore, which I've said. But Maegashira 10, he's far enough away from the real physical monsters, Ganayama and Shona Naomi. Hakuoho's there, but like I said, we don't know how his shoulder is. He should be able to get a winning record fairly easily unless he is to some degree still injured and somehow got 10 wins last time or injured again. A full strength Endo, even for what full strength for him means now, should definitely get a winning record here. 10 wins. I mean, he got it last time, and I don't think anything realistically has changed for him. If he got 10 wins last time, nothing about the competition level for him now changes his ability to do it again. Mitakeumi, C tier. I don't think he's so bad and so broken that he's D tier yet at Maegashira 11, but man, last time was ugly. The fact that he got 9 and 6 when he dropped out of the Joy before means you got to treat him as having at least a reasonable chance of getting a winning record here. I think 8 and 7, 9 and 6, very plausible, but 10 wins at any point in this division seems really unlikely. And since we don't know exactly where he is physically, it's hard to assume a winning record at any point. Hokuseiho, C tier. He's been figured out. Everybody knows what to do against him. The only reason he's not D tier, and he should be in terms of the skills he bothers to put to use, is that he's so physically overwhelming, he's still going to beat some guys just because they can't move him. But more and more guys have been shown the strategy and put it to work of how to knock this dude over, that we should not be surprised if he just keeps hitting losing records until and unless Hakuho decides, hey, I'm going to teach you how to use that big ass body so that you stop looking like an idiot. Takara Fuji, C tier. I mean, who knows with this guy? He's going to go 8 and 7, or he's going to go 7 and 8, or he's going to go 6 and 9. And he might go 9 and 6. But can you see him getting any record outside of that at a double-digit Maegashira rank? Because I can't. C tier. Sadanoumi. C tier, but maybe lower C tier. It was really surprising when he started moving up the ranks and staying there. Like, he had one great tournament, moved up to Maegashira 4 or whatever it was, but then he stuck around. He just wasn't getting his ass kicked like I and a lot of people thought was going to happen. But now he started to be more on the decline. It looks like he's fading, but he's now down far enough that you can say that about just about all the guys around him. So I don't think he's in a position where he's doomed. I don't think you can look at his probable opponents, so like Takara Fuji, Hokuseiho, Myogiryu, Nishiki Fuji, who's better than him, but we don't know his physical state, Aoyama, all of those guys, and say, oh yeah, Sadanoumi's going to end up with a losing record. That's over the top. But it's not looking great for him. He's C tier, but I would avoid him. Myogiryu, C tier. Like I said in the first part, he was 6 and 6 last time, and then just got 3 really, really rough matchups to finish the tournament. That's sumo. At this level, he's going to be around that, 6 and 6, 7 and 5, 8 and 4 in 12 days would be really surprising. And then he's going to get a bunch of other guys who are fighting for their winning records and probably end up with 7 and 8, 8 and 7. Again, another guy who looks destined to have a single digit in wins and losses. Nishiki Fuji, A tier injury risk. I said before the last Basho, during the last tier list, Nishiki Fuji seems hurt, but if he's okay, he should do really well. And I had not seen the report that apparently came out before the tournament where it was like, oh, his foot doesn't work, which made the fact that he started 3-0 even more impressive. But then everything collapsed for him. This is another situation where, kind of like Hakuoho, he's definitely good enough. At Maegashira 13, we know he can crush. But has he really recovered? Nothing has, I haven't actually heard any news about him, but it's really hard to see him recovering that fully that quickly, given that this problem has existed for at least 2 Bashos. So A tier capacity, injury risk definitely. What's he actually going to do? I think a winning record is pretty plausible unless his foot hasn't recovered at all, but I don't know exactly what you're going to get. Big Dan, Aoyama. So I forgot to mention it. I marked it, but I forgot to mention that, yeah, I had him wrong in D tier. I thought he was just too physically faded, but he got it together and basically, through the power of sheer pride, managed to pull himself together and get a winning record. It was really impressive, and he's got to see that the end is coming. So the question is, how much can pride do for him? I think you're going to, from here till whenever he stops, you're going to see a guy who is not going to take unnecessary risks, who's not going to fight in a way that's going to lend itself to racking up a whole bunch of wins. But if he looks like his back is against the wall in terms of surviving in the division, you're going to get everything he can give you. So that leads to, as long as he's low rank, and 14 is low rank, he's always got a chance at Kachikochi, if only because he really, really has to go for it. So, C tier. Kota Shoho, C tier. Much like Kinbozan, I don't know if he's still hurt. He could be, but without anything resembling decent information, I'm going to say he's not. But Maegashira 13-14 is kind of where he was sitting before he had that Jun Yusho run, and then somehow survived at Maegashira 5, and then got hurt and ended up dropping way down. This may just be his level. I don't think we're going to see Kota Shoho drop this far and then go on another crazy double-digit win run. At least not in the sense that, oh, he's healthy now he's going to get double digits. He could do it again eventually, but I think this is really where he is. Maybe more towards the mid-level he'll get, like 9 or 10, but I don't think he's going to be any kind of a Joy regular. We should not expect a ton out of him here, but obviously he's sat here long enough that we know he can get wins, so C tier. Atami Fuji. The last time he was here, he was terrible. He was 4-11. But he did really well in the tournament where Ganayama and Shonen no Umi and Hakuoho all kicked ass and jumped up into Makuuchi. And then he did what he needed to do, which was, with them gone, continue to dominate Juryo. And in fact, he won the Yusho. He's definitely better now than he was in his first try at Makuuchi. I think he'll stick now. Barring any injury, it's pretty likely he'll hang around. But he's not that likely, I think, to end up with 10 wins the way Hakuoho, Ganayama, Shonen no Umi did. He's just not that physically dominant. He's just not that guy. Those three guys all ran into the division like, we are going to smash. And Atami Fuji's like, hey guys, I'm here. Let's have a good time. Winning record, probably. Losing record, maybe. I'm probably putting it 80-20 for him. I just don't think he's on the level of the guys that I have at B tier right now. So I'm going to leave him at C. Chiyoshoma. Much like Aoyama, C tier on the basis of pride and understanding that his career is on the line. I don't think either of those guys have any real intention of fighting much once they hit Juryo. Maybe they'll wait until they fade to Makushita, but you don't get that sense. I don't get that sense. Chiyoshoma at Maegashira 15 will probably find a way to get enough wins to catch a winning record. But if he can't, he's still a couple ranks shy of dropping out of the division, so a 7-8 isn't even that bad. So C tier, he's not going to dominate, but he should pick up just enough wins to keep himself safe. Kageaki, I learned my lesson. The last time I doubted him, he ended up going like 9-6. He's probably towards the bottom end of the C tier in this case, but he is C tier. There's enough weak competition around him that he should be able to pick up some wins. See, here's the thing. When I doubted him, he looked terrible, and then he changed his entire approach. Like, he was going for a normal close-in Tachi, and then he stood back, and he gave himself room to charge, and it worked brilliantly. And ever since then, he's actually done pretty decently. So that can continue. I don't think it's a guarantee, but he's very capable of getting a winning record against the guys at the bottom of this division right now. Sergisho, I think the ride is over. I think he's definitely D tier. Can he get a winning record? Yeah, he's proven he can, but so have all of these guys at one point or another. I think there's just too many guys with too much on the line and too much of a higher level of ability than him for him to find a way to get to 8 wins. And Daishoho, exact same thing. They're at the bottom of the division. I think they're the guys who are going to be dropping to Juryo next time, and we'll see who comes up. And that's the tier list. What do you think? Did I get it right in S tier by not having anybody up there who isn't an injury risk? I don't see anyone who's really a lock as a great fantasy pick. And if you're looking at this from just a regular competitive sumo perspective, I don't see anybody who's really a lock as a favorite for the U show. Contending, sure. I think Hoshoryu, for example, is definitely going to contend. But I don't know that there's anybody who's like, yeah, I would pick that guy and that guy alone as the number one favorite to win the tournament. I don't think there's anybody like that this time. Anything you got, leave it in the comments. Other than that, have a great day, and I'll see you soon.